Welcome to my weekly Scripture for Thoughts video show, a Bronx special, all up in Liquid Avenues, Parks and Recreations, Pelham Parkway, Bronx, New York City, whereby works hard, hustle the wise way, do a down payment investments beyond clean and spiffy, all been Liquid Avenues, Parks and Recreations, Pelham Parkway, Bronx, New York City. Now I'm the host of the most great Bible study group leader and self-independent Reverend Anthony Ant Jeezy Walker. Now, the sermon topic I'm going to preach to you with the beat that's going to back me up is, do not think of yourself much higher than what you really, do not think of yourself much higher than what you really are. Think of yourself as sober judgment. Now, it's that time once again to show you love to me, your favorite great Bible study group leader, and to me, your favorite self-independent Reverend Anthony Ant Jeezy Walker. Show you love to me right now. Yes, thank you everybody for cheers, applause, and standing ovations. Thanks for the love. Now back to the sermon topic. Do not think of yourself much highly than you really are. Use sober judgment. Remember when your elders in your neighborhood has told you, be thankful for what you have and think yourself in sober judgment. Humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, and do not think yourself much highly than what you think you really are. Now the elders in our neighborhood is right. Now, part one is King Saul. Of course, King Saul, after he was anointed king of Israel by Samuel the prophet, then King Saul decided to have a big head. He thought since he was the king of Israel, he was the king of the world. But God had sent Samuel the prophet to tell him that God rebuked it Samuel. God rebuked it Saul. Now Saul should remember that before he was anointed king of Israel, that he should be able to humble himself in front of God, and God would lift him up. No, but once God had lifted him up, become king of Israel, then Saul, the king of Israel, started to have a fat head, think he was all that. So later on in the future, King Saul had did all the wrong things. He had seek a counsel of a witch, and then when the Philistines wanted to kill Saul and his sons, Saul had committed suicide. But that did not prevent the Philistines to chop off his head as well. Now that what goes to show to you. Look at examples of King Saul, king of Israel. Now remember this. Part one, King Saul and 1 Samuel, and do not think of yourself much more highly than you really are. Think of yourself with sober judgment. Now part two, the great banquet in the kingdom of heaven. Now Jesus has said a parable. He said the parable like this. He said the parable in a lesson like this. When you're invited to a banquet or a luncheon or a party, do not take the high seat of the party, because your host, if you do so, your host will come up and tell you, hey sir, can you move on to a lower seat? Then you'll be humiliated to all your people. Remember this, when you're in a banquet, you humble yourself in the sight of God and everybody else. And then when your host comes, when you take the lower seat, then after that, the host of the banquet will say to you, after you take the lower seat, sir, take the high seat, and then you'll be respected by all your peers. Now part two is the great banquet in the kingdom of heaven, what Jesus says and do not think of yourself much more highly than what you really are. Think of yourself with so much judgment. Now part 3 is Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet was a humble man that God had anointed him as prophet of Israel. A prophet of Israel, prophet of Israel and Judah. And then Elijah did all the great things that God had asked him to do. And then when he was about to relinquish his title as prophet of Israel and Judah, you know what happened? A cyclone fireworks hurricane came and took Elijah and took him away and lifted him up in heaven so he won't face death. Now, part 3 is Elijah the prophet in 2 Kings and 2 Kings and 2 Kings chapter 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 2, and do not think of yourself much more highly than what you think you really are. Use silver judgment of yourself. Now, part 4 is what Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 3. He says to the people, he says to the Gentiles and the people of the Middle world and Israel, he said to everybody in this world, in the Middle Age, into the Middle East world, into Europe, into Africa, and to parts of the far east of Asia. He said to the mass of the people in Romans chapter 12, verse 3, he said, do not think yourself more highly than what you really are. Use sober judgment. You know what that means? That means when you humble yourself inside of God and everybody else, and then when that time comes, and when you humble yourself, you better yourself by being thankful being in your own skin, and be thankful who you are, what you're about, and the goals you'd like to achieve in the future. And then when God sees that you humble yourself and you're thankful, and then when you least expect it, God will lift you up to the highest level. Now, here's my conclusion. Now, the next time when you see a person who's doing Bible studies with somebody, with some guy, and some guy decide not to Bible study no more, would you say to that guy who is teaching Bible studies, you say to that guy, do not think of yourself much more highly than what you really are. Use sober judgment. And now this conclusion ends up with a sermon topic with the beat that backed me up is, do not think of yourself much more highly than what you really are. Think of yourself with sober judgment. Now it's that time once again to show your love to me, your favorite great Bible session group leader, and to me, your favorite self-independent Reverend Anthony T.C. Walker. Now, show your love to me. Show your love to me. Show your love to me right now. Yes. Thank you everybody for cheers, applause, and standing ovation. Thanks for the love. Now, as for my weekly Scripture for Thoughts video show, a Bronx special, all up in Liquid Avenue, Parks and Recreations, Pelham Parkway, Bronx, New York City, where everybody works hard, hosted a wise way, to a Dalpin Investments, New York, Cleveland, Spiffy, all up in Liquid Avenue, Parks and Recreations, Pelham Parkway, Bronx, New York City. Now, as for me, your host of the most great Bible discussion group leader and self-independent Reverend Anthony T.C. Walker say, Baba, I saw that type of rap.